This is Cutting Down the Nets. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It is tourney time. First four tomorrow, the best 2 days of the year. Shortly thereafter, I begin this video, which is the bracket show, by reviewing last year's chaos. I want you to point out how many things I got wrong in this bracket, and then understand that I got second in a 100-person contest with this bracket. I got fifth in a 200-person contest. It was in the top 1-2% in some super, super large stuff. All I got right in this thing was UConn in the Final Four. So was it chaotic last year? Yes. But 40% of the people had Alabama in the as the champion. So them losing to San Diego State knocks 40% of the people like out of the money immediately. And that's kind of what you're living off of. Now, Houston didn't get there. They lost to Miami, but UConn getting close enough. Unfortunately, they went a little too far because a few people did have them, which gave them the victory. But if UConn would have stopped at the Final Four or simply beat Miami and lost to San Diego State, I would have taken down both the small field tournaments I was in. So it's tempting to just be like, I want a perfect bracket, so I'm going to do the best I can. I totally get it. But you have to be cognizant of what other people are doing. Luckily, ESPN makes that fairly easy for us. So this is the most picked champions on their bracket dashboard. UConn, no surprise, at 25%. I could see that growing to 30. So you have to kind of rewire your brain to be like, okay, I'm competing against 100 people in this contest. Let's say I think 30, 35, maybe even 40 have UConn as the champion. So if I also have UConn as the champion, I'm really competing against 40 people if UConn wins it all. So I was right, and I still have to beat 40 people that had the exact same thing. What if their Final Four looked like UConn, Houston, Purdue, even Arizona? How many of those 40 have that combo? Probably at least 20, 25. So now, like, where did you get different enough to win? And that's what makes it so hard when you have the chalky champion. Now, if you have Purdue as a champion and you're only competing against 10 other people, then, yeah, I like my chances of being different there and gaining some leverage on the field. ESPN also has America's Bracket, or what the public is doing. They'll show kind of game by game what percent of people are picking which team. So kind of the theme there is you'll see a lot of chalk for the most part. So even if you just played point spreads, you, I think, could be game theory optimal in the first round, if you ask me. So one thing I want to point out is if you're going to compare what percent of the people are picking which team, you also need to understand what's the probability of each team advancing. So even if you didn't use any power rankings or adjusted efficiencies and just relied on point spreads alone, just like looked at each game and said, okay, this team's favored by 3. That's a 61% chance of advancing. And let's just pick, like, I think TCU is favored by 3. It's 58% of the public is picking TCU. So there's still a little edge. You're okay to pick TCU. Now, if TCU is at 75%, be like, look, this is stupid. This game's within a possession. There's no way it's an 80% chance TCU wins that game, even if you feel TCU could win that game. But don't get caught too much doing not what you want to do. That's what makes the brackets fun. Now, it's fun to win a pool and all that, but the best is watching the games and putting the yellow highlighter on. And if you're constantly crossing off game theory plays because you thought Clemson was sneaky, even though like your gut and your heart wanted New Mexico, don't put yourself in that spot, I would say. So what you need to do then is compare this to either implied probabilities from point spreads. So even a 10-point favorite expected to win about 83% of the time. So just keep that in mind. Okay, let's show you how to do this at Bart Torvik. So Bart Torvik has, under Funalytics, tourney time. He'll simulate the tournament using the current odds. So based on the current odds, he has Houston winning 28% of the time. We compare that to ESPN, 13% of the brackets are picking Houston. So there's a leverage point there. UConn's not a bad pick. They're winning 16% of the time, but based on how popular they are, I don't know. If you go UConn, you're going to have to get different elsewhere. North Carolina showing up here at 2% of the time winning it all, but 10%, including my 9-year-old son, are on that side. There's also a little drop down here. My entire brand and how I handicap basketball games, all based on recent efficiencies. Torvik does have a last 10 here. It's going to be close to what I do, but don't be surprised if things are off a little bit. When you pick an arbitrary number like 10, just know I'm looking at a few more data points, and I kind of massage that a little bit in the algorithm. So the reason I do that is sometimes 11 games ago, a team had a really good game or a really bad game. And if you just look at last 10, it doesn't account for that. So you may have a calculated point spread of like, hey, in the last 10 games, this team's favored by 8.3. But if you use last 11, it might be 10.1 or it might be 6.4. So if that point spread was like 7, then it's like, yeah. So I like to read more data points than just picking one like last 10. But this will get you pretty close in an efficient way to what I'm trying to accomplish. So you would simply compare like round of 32. Let's just start at the top. UConn 97%. Using recent data, UConn has a 99% chance of winning. I don't think anyone's going to have Stetson beating UConn. I think all the 1 seeds are pretty safe this year, although it never felt like they would lose. Some interesting ones, though, like FAU Northwestern. Even without Ty Berry, Northwestern's been pretty efficient compared to FAU. So Torvik's recent data, last 10 games, gives Northwestern a 71% chance of winning, and more people are picking FAU. So that is an opportunity to pick up a point on the field, so to speak. So you could do something like that and compare all the way there. I think the first round is somewhat easy. You're looking at like, what do I want to do? Where am I willing to take a swing? And personally, I like small misses, I guess is how I would describe it. So I'll give you 2 examples of a small miss and a big miss. Auburn plays Yale. If you wanted to take a swing on Yale, I think that's bad because Auburn has like a 10% chance of cutting down the nets. Even if we looked at current odds, Auburn has a 6% chance. So I don't want my champion or the champion to be someone I thought would lose in the first round. And then when they don't, you cross off that like you're making 6 lines across your bracket. I mean, it's just ultimate tilt, just light it on fire. However, if I looked at like Alabama, that's a 1% chance of cutting it down. If I use the last 10, Alabama probably even goes down further to, basically 0. I mean, they're getting like a 50% chance even early on. I'm willing to take that swing. So 2 4 seeds, similar like conferences, similar wins and losses, but have to understand what the opportunity cost is if you miss that swing. So I'd much prefer a small miss. Washington State Drake, I think, is a small miss because if I'm wrong, it's likely Washington State loses in the second round. If I'm wrong about Dayton, Nevada, it's likely they lose in the second round. I mean, not entirely true, but you kind of get the picture. Is you don't want to gamble on an eventual champion in the first round. So what I've done is I've taken all my stuff and I've converted it into a little bracket here. So I'll start with kind of UConn's region up here. These are adjusted efficiency margins. So I just took, for their last 8 to 11 games, I took their adjusted offensive efficiency and calculated the delta between that and their defensive efficiency. So this is not a point spread. So what I mean by that is I don't have UConn by 44 over Stetson. Adjusted efficiency margins are per 100 possessions. So if they played a 100 possession game, yes, I would have UConn by 44. They're not playing a 100 possession game. So it's likely something like this. Take it to 44 times 0.67. Say there's 67 possessions in that game. You're going to get about 30 points, which I think is the number I'm rolling with. And I think that line's more like 26. So a little foreshadowing to the gambling show, but usually don't bet one seeds. I kind of like UConn there against the spread as well. So the thing to note in this region is how high some of the other teams are. So while I like UConn overall, a 37.2 adjusted efficiency margin, you have to factor in the path for them to get to the championship. And their path is just simply harder than other people's paths. And I think that's another case that explains that UConn is just a little bit too popular, even though they're an awesome, awesome team. So that's this region. Auburn stands out. Illinois stands out. Iowa State stands out. Not a surprise. That's the 1 seed. That's the 2 seed. That's the 3 seed. And that's the 4 seed. But relative to other 4s, relative even to other 8s and 9s, relative to other 3s, relative to other 2s, this is a really strong region and pretty tricky for UConn. I think getting to the Final Four in that region is harder than winning a Final Four game against the other region down here, where I do not have North Carolina with the strongest efficiency margin. In fact, North Carolina's efficiency margin is close to the 8-9 seeds. I expect that point spread to be somewhere in the 3 range. So do you want your national champion that you picked to be a 3-point favorite in the round of 32? I don't. I'd rather them be like a 13 or a 15-point favorite. Also, I think it's likely if they get by either Michigan State or Mississippi State, their next game, they're going to be like a 3 or 4-point favorite. And you kind of see like how many of those games do you expect to win in a row? So hopefully these efficiency margins will help you on some tiebreakers like Dayton, Nevada. Again, it's not 5 points. You'd have to take 5 times like against Dayton, probably 65 possessions. So about 3 points better. So I'd give Nevada like a 60% chance of winning. So you can use my stuff, or you can use just straight up point spreads or Bart Torvik's year-long stuff, team rankings. I mean, really, I just want you thinking about what's the public doing and where can I gain some leverage? When do I need to get weird and when do I not need to get weird? 2 final regions here. I'll just point out that I had Creighton as the strongest team here. Creighton does have some matchup flaws with their extreme drop coverage. They're capable of being beat by really, really good guards. So Tennessee's not a strong offensive team, but I think that's just kind of interesting. Purdue can be beat by pressure. Creighton's not going to apply it. Gonzaga's not going to apply it. Maybe TCU can. Tennessee definitely can, but yeah, I don't know. I think that one's pretty open too. Really would come down to what the public's doing, and I think only like 9% were picking Purdue to win it all. So kind of interesting angle there. That team's far better than last year's version. Going up, I do like Houston. Duke has a strong recent profile. Could be a trick spot in the 8-9. They did have a little injury concern with their big man. The bottom half of the bracket, I would just note that Marquette's number is much higher if you run the splits with and without Tyler Kolek. So I'll post this in the description of this video. What's next is I'll do 2 videos, a Thursday gambling video, so for the Thursday matchups, and then a Friday one as well. And then after the winners advance, we'll look at Saturday and Sunday after that. Enjoy this time of year. Nothing better than getting that highlighter and highlighting that you were correct